It's time for another installment of Martial Law with Marshall Chriswell. This radio program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing. The information may not be complete or correct depending on the date of your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. And because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. And he's Marshall Chriswell. He certainly fits that definition. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us here today. Let's talk a little family law, if you would.
Sure.
It's a pretty thorny situation. It can be really, really difficult, and with families involved, it's always going to be emotional. But when we talk family law, whatever it is, and particularly I'm thinking of custody, when there is abuse, when there is domestic violence involved, maybe a drug history, it is really, really tricky to get around, isn't it?
It is, and unfortunately, we're seeing, as you well know, lots of issues, not just in Indiana here, but all over the place with mental health, with drug addiction, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and domestic violence, and dealing with these in the context of a family law case. Often, you have a situation where these issues are intertwined. All of them are maybe present in one case. You have a situation where someone has, potentially has mental health issues, maybe untreated mental health issues. In turn, they turn to drugs and alcohol, creates a volatile situation in the home, and domestic violence occurs. So you see these things in isolation or all, in the same case.
One of the interesting things to me about it is that there can be, and you know this more than I, there can be situations where you are right on the edge of someone being declared incompetent or declared to be in need of protection from an abusive situation, but not quite there, even though everybody involved can see the potential, and being able to find your way around that legally. And overall, the biggest issue is protection of the people who are most vulnerable. That can be downright scary for that person involved in that situation.
Right, and that's what I see in so many cases. The victim of abuse, whether it's just them or the children are involved as victims as well, are in a situation where they're scared. They feel hopeless. They feel helpless, and they feel like the quote system isn't going to be able to do anything to protect them. So that results in maybe not separating from a violent spouse or partner who's perpetrating domestic violence, and worse, making the situation worse and more dangerous. And what they need to understand, and what I tell people when I meet with them and they disclose that this is happening in the home, is that while it's not perfect, and I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to solve every problem they have, there are tools. There are tools at our disposal to protect them, to protect their children, and to get this person. Often, what the person needs is help, right? And they need to make a commitment to mental health treatment or drug and alcohol treatment, and there are mechanisms to do that within the law.
Yeah. Okay. So there are, of course, great resistances when we're talking about these issues. But what are some of the legal recourses that a victim in a family law case might have available?
Well, the first thing that we think about is, does the allegations of domestic violence, do they rise to the level that we want to get law enforcement involved? Has there been a crime committed here that is going to be able to hold a charge and be proved through a criminal proceeding? So that's the first thing is we think, do we want to get law enforcement involved? And then in addition to that, we always want to look to the protection from abuse statute. There is law in Pennsylvania that a victim of domestic violence, victim of abuse, and that is defined as someone who is committed, if physical abuse or the threats of physical violence or something that would put someone in reasonable fear of physical violence, those things have occurred. Person can file a petition for protection from abuse on behalf of themselves and on behalf of minor children that have been involved as well as victims or witnesses of the abuse. And ultimately, what that process leads to is if you can show that abuse has occurred, then a protection from abuse order would be entered for a period of up to 3 years. So and it's a no-contact order. So the perpetrator of the abuse would have no contact with the victim of the abuse for a period of up to 3 years, which includes physical contact, which includes stalking, harassment, even contact online, so social media, emails, text messages, passing messages between third parties. It's a total no-contact order, and it's enforceable by law enforcement. And if it's violated, it is a what we call indirect criminal contempt, which is a quasi-criminal charge.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest of those protections. Are there others out there that people can use?
There are. So particularly as you mentioned in the context of a child custody case, this arises a lot, where you have a spouse who has, like you said, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, which has led to erratic behavior. And maybe it is, like you said, right up to the edge of being abusive, but something that maybe doesn't yet warrant criminal charges or a protection from abuse order. But there's still a serious and real fear for their ability to function normally and care for their children and have normal unsupervised custody time like a parent normally would and things. So what can we do? You can file petitions in court through the custody case to require this person to have a psychiatric or psychological evaluation, to have a drug and alcohol evaluation. And the court order can actually require them not only to have that evaluation, but to follow through on any recommendation that's being made by the mental health professional in order to treat that issue. And the court system can then hold that person accountable through the process, and their ability to really to have a meaningful relationship with their children and things is going to be based on what kind of progress and commitment they're showing to getting better. So you can get in and usually I try to do this right at the beginning of a case, right? If we know somebody has an issue, let's get things filed so that we have mental health professionals that get involved and perform these evaluations and see exactly what kind of help this person needs.
It would seem to me this is one of the most emotional types of instances that you would have in your circle as an attorney. And so getting that person who is in that very terrible situation to contact an attorney is going to be an awfully difficult decision for them to make, and sometimes they would be so reluctant to make it that even though it is absolutely common sense, they still don't make that step of doing that. Do you get referrals from agencies to which they've been going more often, or is it generally something that someone comes to you as a victim and says, I need to do something legally?
It's both. I do get sometimes will get referrals from some of the the mental health professionals here in the area that are dealing with a situation. Someone's in counseling and it becomes evident that there's a serious situation, and they people I've dealt with in the past maybe would refer someone to me, or someone just comes in as a regular consultation. But it's so important for them to know that there are ways to help. These PFA orders I'm talking about, you can walk in if you have credible allegations of abuse. You can have a temporary PFA order in place within 24 hours. So these kinds of things. So but yeah, it's just really important to understand that there are tools out there to help.
Yeah, and that being the case, you should not hesitate to use them. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you about this issue, I'm sure there's a confidentiality thing that comes into place here as well, and a secrecy that maybe they don't even want that the abusive spouse to know that they've gone to an attorney. You'll do everything you can to protect them, right?
Confidentiality is, of course, one of the cornerstones of an attorney's practice and our ethical responsibilities. Also, it's important to know that if you do file something like a protection from abuse, what we can do, if you've moved out of the house, we can keep your address confidential. We can keep it out of the court records. Things like that maybe you wouldn't think that are possible, but they are.
All right. So for someone to contact you, what do they need to do?
You can give me a call at 724-465-5826. Stop and see me in the R&P Cole Building at 655 Church Street in Indiana, or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
Thanks so much, Marshall.
Thanks, Todd. Take care.
You too.
Todd, take care.
You too.